The air inside the alien ship was cold. Commander Alec Rains could see his breath in the dim light. Thick metal cuffs held his wrists behind his back as two tall alien guards marched him forward. Their smooth silver armor made no sound, and their glowing blue eyes watched him without emotion. He was deep inside the Zireth Empire's flagship, a massive structure orbiting a dying red star. Humanity had sent Alec as a peace envoy to the Zireth, hoping to end rising tensions between Earth and the alien empire. But the talks had gone wrong. The Zireth ambassador called humans primitive and chaotic. Soon after, Alec was taken prisoner. Now, after days in a cold cell, he was being brought before the Queen. The throne room was vast and strange. It had no walls, only flowing curtains of light. The floor shimmered like water, yet it was solid. Dozens of alien nobles lined the sides, their faces hidden behind delicate masks. At the center, raised high above all, sat Queen Saraveth IX. She was unlike any alien Alec had seen. Her skin had a soft glow, pale silver with hints of violet. Her eyes were large, deep, and full of power, yet they held something more: curiosity. She wore no crown, only a long flowing robe that moved like mist. As Alec was pushed to his knees before her, he didn't bow. He raised his head and looked straight into her eyes. The court gasped. Among the Zireth, no one dared look directly at the Queen. But Alec was human. Queen Saraveth tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle. "You are bold," she said, her voice smooth and calm, echoing through the chamber. "I'm not here to beg," Alec replied. "I came to talk peace. You chose chains instead." There was silence. The guards tensed. One noble stepped forward, whispering harsh words in the Queen's ear. Saraveth raised one hand, and the noble stepped back at once. "You do not fear me?" she asked. "I don't fear what I don't understand," Alec answered honestly. "But I'm trying to." The Queen's lips curled slightly, not a full smile, but close. "Interesting." She rose from her throne and walked slowly down the steps, her robe gliding behind her. The nobles watched in silence as their ruler approached the human prisoner. Alec held her gaze, refusing to look away. "You are the first human I've spoken to," she said, stopping just a few steps away. "The first who has dared to look into my eyes. Then maybe it's time your people saw us for who we really are," Alec replied. The Queen studied him in silence for a long moment. Finally, she turned to her court. "This human will not be executed," she declared. "He will remain in the palace and under my watch." The court erupted in murmurs and protests, but the Queen raised her hand once more. All fell silent. As the guards pulled Alec to his feet, he looked at Saraveth again. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something quiet, unknown, and powerful. For the first time in a long while, Alec didn't feel like a prisoner. He felt like something was beginning. Something no one, not even the Queen, could have expected. Commander Alec Rains was not in a cell anymore. Instead, he now stayed in a large, silent chamber inside the Zireth Palace. The walls glowed softly, and the air smelled like a mix of flowers and metal. There were no windows, but the ceiling showed a false sky, always calm and blue. Alec didn't know if he was a guest or a prisoner. There were no guards inside the room, but two stood quietly outside at all times. Food arrived 3 times a day, fresh, colorful and strange but tasty. He was not allowed to leave, but he was not treated badly. It was like being inside a golden cage. Each day, a soft voice would speak from the wall. "The Queen requests your presence." He would be taken to a round room filled with soft chairs and quiet music. Queen Saraveth waited there. She never wore armor. Only soft robes of light blue or silver, with her long white hair tied loosely behind her head. Their talks started carefully. "What is the purpose of your species?" she asked once. Alec smiled. "We're still figuring that out." She frowned. "You have explored space, fought wars, built machines, and yet you do not know your purpose. We create meaning as we go. Maybe that's our strength." The queen seemed confused, but she listened. She always listened. As days passed, their conversations grew deeper. They spoke of Earth's history, art, music, freedom, and mistakes. Alec told her about old poets and new explorers, about ancient wars and simple dreams. He spoke of people struggling, rising, failing, and trying again. He told her stories of courage, of kindness, and of hope. Sarah was fascinated. "You humans are full of chaos," she said one evening. "Yet, your chaos has beauty in it." "We're not perfect," Alec said, "but we keep moving forward. That's what matters." The Queen's court did not approve of her meetings with him. Whispers filled the palace halls. The High Council believed the human was dangerous. "He is planting strange thoughts in her mind," one noble said. "He will turn her away from our ancient ways." But the Queen did not stop. She found something in Alec that she had never found among her own people: honesty without fear. He did not worship her. He did not lie to please her. He spoke as an equal even when he disagreed. "You challenge me," she said once. "Maybe you need someone who will." That night, Sarah sat alone in her chamber, thinking. The stars outside were silent, distant. For centuries, the Zirith Empire had followed strict order. One law, one voice, one throne. But now, a single human had made her wonder. Was it strength to rule without question? Or was it bravery to change? The next morning, Sarah took Alec to the Hall of Memory. It was a massive room filled with moving images, scenes from Zirith history, great battles, long speeches, and rulers standing proud and alone. "We are taught that emotion is weakness," she said quietly. "But sometimes I look at these memories and feel nothing. They are only pictures without soul." Alec watched the images pass. "Then maybe your people need a new kind of memory," he said. "One that feels something." Sarah turned to him. "You speak of impossible things, human." "Impossible," Alec replied, "is just something that hasn't been tried yet." She stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or argue, but something in his words stayed with her. As days turned to weeks, something began to grow between them. Not just respect, but a quiet connection. Sarah found herself waiting for Alec's visits, thinking about his stories at night. Alec, too, began to see the Queen not as an enemy but as a person, trapped by her own crown, by the expectations of a world that demanded control over compassion. One night, after a long talk about Earth's music, Sarah asked softly, "What would you do if you had power over millions?" Alec paused. "I'd listen. Then I'd try to make sure no one felt small or forgotten." Sarah looked at him with eyes that no longer held only power, but something gentler, something searching. "You are not like anyone I've ever met," she whispered. "And you," Alec replied, "are not the monster I expected." They sat, in silence. Somewhere in the stars, a new story was beginning, one that could change two worlds forever. The Zirith Palace was quiet, but not peaceful. There was a storm building behind its polished walls and shining lights. Whispers ran through the long silver halls like cold wind. The nobles were worried. The Queen was changing, and they blamed the human. Commander Alec Rains, though still watched by guards, was no longer a prisoner in the usual sense. He moved freely through parts of the palace, spoke openly with Queen Sarah, and even gave advice on matters of state. The Zirith High Council did not approve. A few called it madness, others called it treason. Queen Sarah, however, did not care for their fear. She saw something new in Alec's words, a spark of truth she had long forgotten. He made her question rules that had never been broken. He made her wonder what kind of ruler she truly was. One evening, Alec walked with Sarah in the moon garden, a quiet place filled with glowing plants and soft light. The two walked side by side, not speaking much. There was comfort in the silence. "Do your people ever rise against their leaders?" she asked suddenly. Alec looked at her, surprised by the question. "Yes. When leaders forget the people they serve, Saraveth nodded slowly. And what happens then? Sometimes there's change, he said. Sometimes there's pain. But sometimes when something better is born. The queen said nothing, but her eyes were deep in thought. What Alec didn't know was that while they spoke of peace and change, others were preparing for war. Deep below the palace, in the shadow halls, a secret meeting was taking place. High Lord Varric, head of the royal guard, stood at the center of the dark room. Around him stood 7 other nobles, all dressed in black robes. The queen has grown weak, Varric said. She listens to a human like he is her equal. She speaks of kindness and change. This is not our way. The people grow restless, said another noble. Some say she plans to rewrite the codes of rule. Varric narrowed his eyes. She must be stopped. The empire must not fall because of one outsider's poison. There was silence. Then someone asked, "What do you suggest?" Varric spoke coldly. "We remove the human. Then, we remove her." That night, Alec returned to his chambers and found something strange. A piece of paper on the table. A warning. Just 5 words. They are planning to strike. There was no name, no sign of who had left it. But Alec had been in war. He had faced betrayal before. He knew when danger was close. He asked to see the queen at once, inside her private study. Saraveth was reading reports from different planets under her rule. Alec closed the door behind him. "We have a problem," he said. He showed her the paper. Her calm face turned serious. "They know I've been listening to you," she said softly. "And they fear what you've awakened in me." Alec stepped closer. "They're planning something. You need to be careful." For a moment, Saraveth said nothing. Then she walked to the window, looking out at the glowing city below. "When I was a child," she began, "I was trained to feel nothing, to rule with logic, not emotion. I was told that kindness is weakness, and that rulers must be distant." She turned to Alec. "But now, after all these years, I meet you, a human with no crown, no power, and I feel more alive than ever before." Alec looked into her eyes. "You don't have to face this alone." A long silence passed between them. The stars outside the window seemed to shimmer brighter. "I trust you, Alec Rains," she said finally. "More than I've trusted anyone in years." Later that night, hidden guards tried to enter Alec's chambers, but the queen had doubled his protection. The attackers were caught and removed quietly. Word reached High Lord Varric the next morning. His plan had failed for now, but he was not done. He now knew one thing clearly. The queen would not let go of the human willingly, and if she would not step down, then she might fall with him. Back in the moon garden, Saraveth stood alone, thinking. The wind was soft. The glowing plants swayed gently. Alec joined her quietly. "They tried to kill me," he said. She nodded. "They will try again." "Then we need a plan," he said. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Tell me, Alec, if I left the throne, if I gave up everything, what would I be?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said softly, "You'd be free, and still more than enough." The queen looked into his eyes. Something was changing, not just in her, but in the empire itself. And it had only just begun. The sun above the palace ceiling shone like a soft pearl, but the light felt different now. Tension moved through the air like a quiet shadow. The queen's choice to protect Alec had changed everything. The nobles no longer whispered. They planned. Alec knew he was a symbol of change, and change scared people who loved power. Yet in the middle of it all, Queen Saraveth walked with calm steps. She was different now. Her eyes still held power, but they also held warmth. Her voice, once cold and distant, had become thoughtful and gentle. Her days began early, reading reports and meeting with advisors. But now, Alec stood by her side in those meetings. His presence caused angry looks, but she no longer cared. His view? His questions, his honesty, they helped her see what she had once ignored. "Why do they hate you so much?" she asked Alec one morning. "Because I'm not afraid to say what they don't want to hear," he answered. "And maybe, because they see you listening." She looked at him. "And what do you see when you look at me now?" Alec paused. Then, without looking away, he said, "Someone who could change the future, if she has the courage to break the past." Outside the palace, in hidden places across the Zireth capital, people were talking. Common citizens began to wonder why a human, a stranger, had reached the queen's heart. Some were angry, others were curious, and some began to hope. One day, a message came from a mining colony far away. It read, "We heard the Queen speaks of peace. If it's true, then we stand with her." It was the first message of support from a world that had once feared the throne. But with hope also came danger. "Hi." Lord Varric gathered his loyal nobles in the secret chamber again. "She grows bolder. Now she speaks of freedom, of stepping down," Varric said. "She forgets that this empire was built on control, not compassion." "What will you do?" asked one noble. "I will remind her what fear looks like." The next day, an explosion shook the outer palace wall. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. Step down or fall. Alec rushed to the queen's chamber as alarms rang through the palace. He found her standing still, watching smoke rise from a distance. "They've made their move," Alec said. "Yes," she whispered, "and now I must make mine." She turned to him, her eyes strong and calm. "I've made my decision. Tomorrow I will call the High Council. I will speak to the Empire, and I will give them a choice." Alec stepped closer. "Are you sure?" "I am." She held his gaze. "But first, I need to know something from you." He waited, unsure of what she would say. "If I leave the throne, if I walk away from all of it, will I still be someone to you?" Alec smiled gently. "You already are." She took a breath. Then, for the first time, she reached out and took his hand. It was a simple gesture, but in that moment, it said more than any words. The next day, the grand hall of the palace was full. Nobles in long robes, guards in silver armor, and advisors with sharp eyes stood in silence as Queen Sareveth entered. She wore no crown, only a white robe and a simple silver necklace. Alec stood behind her. She stepped forward, her voice calm and steady. "For centuries we have ruled with cold logic. We have believed strength means silence and control. But I have seen something different." She looked at the crowd. "I have met someone who reminded me that leadership is not control, it is care. That peace is not weakness, it is wisdom." The room remained silent. "I will not force change," she said, "but I will no longer rule by fear." Gasps filled the hall. "I offer the Empire a new path, one of balance, one where all voices matter, not just the powerful. I ask you to choose." A pause, then murmurs. High Lord Varric stepped forward. "This is madness," he said. "She is under the human spell. We must not let her throw away our future." Queen Sareveth looked at him. "No, I am not throwing it away. I am giving it back to the people." Varric raised his hand, but the guards around him did not move. One by one, they stepped away. The room shifted. The power he had held for so long was slipping. Alec watched as Sareveth stood strong, her voice clear. And in that moment, even her enemies saw what he had seen long before. She was not just a queen. She was a leader who chose love over fear. The palace was no longer the same. Since Queen Sareveth's speech in the Grand Hall, a storm of change had begun to sweep across the empire. Messages arrived daily, from governors, scholars, soldiers, and even simple workers. Some praised the queen's words, others were afraid. Many simply waited to see what would happen next. But no one ignored her anymore. Inside the palace, the queen met with her council every morning. The nobles looked tense. Some still believed she had lost her way. Others had begun to respect her bravery, even if they didn't say it out loud. High Lord Varric was quiet now, but his eyes still watched Alec closely. He hadn't given up. He was simply waiting for another chance. Alec knew it too. But for now, he stayed close to Sareveth, not as a soldier or prisoner, but as someone she trusted. One morning, Sareveth stood at the large glass window in her private chamber. The sky above was soft and golden. Birds from distant worlds flew peacefully across the artificial sky dome. "I've been thinking," she said without turning. "All this time I believed strength meant staying alone, that I had to carry everything, myself." Alec joined her. "You don't have to anymore." She looked at him. "But if I step down, what am I then?" He smiled gently. "You're still you. You're not just a queen. You're someone who chose to care. That's rarer than any crown." She studied his face for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she asked, "What if I asked you to stay? Not as a guest, but as someone by my side?" Alec was quiet for a long moment. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Would you marry me, Alec Rains, if I left the throne?" The room was silent. Even the wind through the palace gardens seemed to pause. Alec took a deep breath. "Yes, I would. Not because of your title or your power, but because of who you are, who you've become." For a moment, Sareveth looked almost human. Her eyes shimmered, not with power but with feeling. Later that day, Queen Sareveth made her announcement across the empire. In a special broadcast, her face appeared on every screen, from the cold mining moons to the floating cities above gas giants. She stood tall, her voice calm and strong. "I have ruled with all my heart, but I believe the time has come for something new. I will not wear the crown forever. I will guide a peaceful transition and prepare a new council chosen by the people. This empire must belong to all of us, not just a throne." The message shocked the stars. Some cheered, others called it betrayal. But none could deny her courage. Among the crowd watching from different planets, many Zereth citizens saw something they had never seen before. A leader who gave up power by choice, and beside her, a human. Strange, but steady. A reminder that change can come from anywhere. That night, the palace was quieter than ever. Sareveth and Alec stood in the moon garden, looking up at the stars above. "You know," Alec said with a smile, "Earth has a tradition. When people get engaged, they give a ring." "A ring?" Sareveth raised an eyebrow. "It's a symbol. A promise." She thought for a moment. "We Zereth use crystal pendants. They glow with the warmth of the giver's heart." She reached into her robe and pulled out a tiny silver chain with a glowing stone. "I want you to have this," she said. Alec took the pendant and smiled. "I've never received anything like this." "Then now you have," she said, her voice soft. They stood together, two souls from different worlds, tied by something neither had expected: trust, respect, and something deeper. But far away, in the dark corners of the palace, not everyone accepted the Queen's new path. High Lord Varric gathered his remaining loyalists. "She will destroy the empire," he said, "and the human has turned her heart to weakness." A young noble spoke up. "But the people support her now. They believe in her words." Varric's eyes were cold. "Then we must act, before she gives the crown away." He held up a device. "This will disable the palace shields for just 1 hour. That is all we need." They began to prepare for the final strike. Back in the palace, Alec had a strange feeling. He had felt this before, during battles, just before something went wrong. His instincts told him danger was near. He turned to Sareveth. "Something's coming." She nodded. "I feel it too." Together, they walked back into the palace. Whatever was coming, they would face it side by side. Night had fallen over the Zirith capital. Stars glowed softly above the palace's energy dome, but inside a different kind of light began to rise, one born not of peace, but of betrayal. Queen Sareveth stood at the palace's central command deck, reading reports from across the empire. Her decision to step down and form a new council had spread quickly. Some sectors responded with joy, others with silence, and a few with resistance. But overall, the galaxy had begun to listen. Alec stood beside her, quiet but alert. Something felt wrong. "I don't like this silence," he said, watching the city lights from the wide crystal window. Sareveth nodded. "Neither do I. It feels like a storm waiting to fall," and the storm was already moving. Below the palace, High Lord Varric gave the signal. He had waited for this moment, 1 hour when the shield would drop. Just 1 hour to take everything back. Elite soldiers loyal only to him moved silently through, the lower halls disabling key systems. Lights flickered. Guards began to notice strange movements, but by then it was too late. The shield dropped. A sleek black ship slipped through the sky above and landed on a hidden platform. From it came soldiers in dark armor carrying advanced weapons. They were not there to talk. They were there to take the throne. Back in the palace, alarms began to ring. Sareveth's face changed at once, from thoughtful ruler to war-trained. "Leader, they're here," she said calmly. Alec was already moving. "You have to get to the secure room." "No," she said, stepping forward. "If I hide now, everything I said, everything I promised, will mean nothing. I must face this." He looked at her. "Then I'm facing it with you." She gave a small nod. "Together, then." They moved through the halls quickly. Loyal guards joined them as they passed. The attackers were already inside the upper levels, spreading fast. Blaster fire echoed through the grand halls. But Sareveth was not, just a ruler. She was trained from birth in strategy and survival. She moved with precision, giving sharp orders. Her guards followed her without question. Alec, though human, was no less prepared. Years of combat experience kicked in. He guided the queen through tight corners, avoided ambushes, and even disarmed 2 attackers on their path. At one hallway, they met Captain Rail, one of Sareveth's oldest protectors. "Varric's forces are trying to reach the throne room," she reported. "Then we'll stop them there," Sareveth said. "We end this where it began." The throne room was wide and silent as they entered, but not for long. The doors burst open behind them. Varric stood there, armored and cold, a small army behind him. "You've failed your people, Sareveth," he said loudly. "But I will save the Empire, even if I must take your life to do it." Sareveth stepped forward without fear. "You call this saving? You bring weapons and shadows. I offered them light. You gave them weakness." "No," she said. "I gave them choice." Alec stepped up beside her, and the sight of the human standing calmly beside the queen made Varric's face twist with anger. "This ends now," Varric growled. Then the battle began. It was fast, loud, and full of chaos. Energy blasts flew across the throne room. Guards fought side by side. Alec pulled Sareveth to cover while returning fire. She used her own training to defend and guide her people. But Varric was strong. Too strong. He broke through the lines, reaching the queen. Alec turned just in time to see Varric raise his blade toward her. Without thinking, Alec jumped in the way. The blade cut across his shoulder. He fell, bleeding, but still alive. Sareveth cried out and caught him before he hit the ground. "Stay with me," she said, voice shaking. Alec gritted his teeth. "I'm not leaving you. Not now." With fury burning in her eyes, Sareveth turned and faced Varric. She didn't fight with hate. She fought with purpose. Their blades clashed. Energy sparked around them. One mistake would mean death. But in the end, it was Sareveth who stood tall. With one final move, she disarmed Varric and held her blade to his chest. "Enough," she said firmly. "You don't speak for the Empire anymore." Varric fell to his knees, defeated. The battle ended. The attackers surrendered or fled. The guards cheered, not because of victory in war, but because peace had survived. Saraveth dropped to her knees beside Alec. "You stayed," she whispered. "I told you I would," he said, smiling through the pain. She held his hand tightly. "You risked everything." "So did you," he replied. Then softly he added, "You still want to marry me?" She laughed gently, tears in her eyes. More than ever. A gentle wind moved through the gardens of the Zirith Palace. The war was over. The throne still stood, but everything around it had changed. Queen Saraveth no longer wore the royal robes. Her crown now rested in a case made of crystal, sealed away, not as a symbol of lost power but of a new beginning. It had been 2 weeks since the night of the battle. The wounds were healing, both on the outside and deep within the hearts of the people. High Lord Varric and his loyalists had been taken into custody. Trials would follow, but there would be no more bloodshed. Peace had won. But it had come with a cost. Alec sat under a silver leaf tree, his arm in a sling, watching the Zirith sun rise. Its light painted the sky with colors not seen on Earth, soft green mixed with violet and gold. He smiled as he heard quiet footsteps. Behind him, Saraveth sat beside him, dressed in simple robes, her hair loose and free. "You're up early," she said. "So are you," Alec replied with a small grin. She nodded. "It feels like a dream sometimes, like we're standing in a story someone else wrote." He looked at her. "If this is a story, I'm glad I got to be a part of it." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sky change. Then Saraveth said softly, "The council is almost ready. Elections for the new leadership begin next month." "And you?" Alec asked. "What will you do when you're no longer queen?" She turned to him. "I plan to leave the palace, travel to the worlds I once ruled from a distance, talk to people, help them build something better." He smiled. "That sounds good." She paused. "I want you with me." Alec nodded. "Always." That afternoon, the palace opened its gates for the first time in 100 years. Not for war, not for politics, but for a wedding. It wasn't a grand royal event with golden power. It was something simpler, something honest. Zirith and human guests gathered under the open sky dome. Flowers from across the galaxy floated in the air, carried by light winds and small drones. The queen, no longer ruling, but still respected, stood beside Alec in front of a glowing fountain. Her people watched with quiet hope. They had never seen their queen smile like this, never seen her so full of life. The ceremony was spoken in both Zirith and English. The words were short, but full of meaning. Alec placed the glowing crystal pendant around Saraveth's neck. She, in turn, gave him a silver ring crafted from Zirith sky metal, which changed color with warmth and light. They held hands. "Do you choose each other not for a crown, not for power, but for trust, respect, and love?" asked the elder. They answered together, "We do." And just like that, the ceremony was complete. The people cheered. For the first time in history, a human had not just walked among the Zirith, but had become part of their heart. Later that night, Alec and Saraveth stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Lights blinked across the skyline like stars on Earth. Ships moved slowly through the sky. Music from many worlds played softly in the air. "I never imagined this," Alec said quietly. "Neither did I," Saraveth replied, "but I'm glad it happened." He turned to her. "Do you miss it, the throne?" She shook her head. "No, because I found something better." He raised an eyebrow. "What's better than being queen of a star empire?" She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Being free. Being with someone who sees me, not just the crown." They stood in silence for a long while, arms around each other, watching the stars. Then Alec whispered, "So, where do we go from here?" Saraveth smiled. "Anywhere, the stars are open now." And so they left the palace a week later, not in a warship but in a small star cruiser built for two. They traveled from one world to another, meeting farmers on dry desert planets, talking to engineers on floating cities, and walking through the forests of green moons. People listened. People smiled. Some were still unsure, but most were ready to believe in something new. They didn't rule anymore. They inspired, and wherever they went, people said the same thing. They gave up everything, just to build something better. Far away on a quiet planet with blue oceans and warm sunsets, Alec and Saraveth built a home. Not a palace. A simple house with open doors, soft lights, and a garden filled with flowers from two worlds. Sometimes, Saraveth wrote stories for children. Sometimes Alec fixed old machines just for fun. But most of all, they lived and loved.